Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Blitzkrieg, our own strategic affairs show. Now, everybody's talking about China, everybody's talking about the Galwan Valley, Daulat Beg Oldie, Shyok River, the Galwan River, and so on and so forth. These have become household names in India. But beyond all this, there is an aggressive China. How does one deal with China? What are we to do with China? These incursions are not new. It is the first time that it's become so bloody after 1967. But China has always been aggressive. China has designs. China is expansionist. China is imperial in its outlook. So today we have a very special guest with us, and we're going to ask this guest a few questions to clear our own doubts and to get an overall strategic perspective about what happens. How can we deal with an ever belligerent China? It's my honor and privilege to bring to you Lieutenant General D.B. Shikatkar. General Shikatkar has unique experiences throughout his 4-decade career in the Indian Army. He's commanded 4 Corps, which is a very, very famous and elite corps. He has been Deputy Director General Military Operations, dealing with East Asia and China. He's been member of a joint working group dealing with India-China relations, represented Army headquarters, and finalizing the Peace and Tranquility Agreement under the Ministry of External Affairs. I can go on and on and on, and for this, to explain what the general has done in his career and is doing even now, I would have to, go for another episode of Blitzkrieg. His experience is so wide. He is the fountainhead of the Shikatkar Committee report. General Shikatkar also has 2 PhDs and is doing, interestingly, a 3rd PhD, which is, interestingly, on psychological and information warfare in the 21st century. Sir, Jai Hind, and a very warm welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Grateful to you. Feel honored to be with you.
Thank you, sir. The honor is absolutely ours. So one thing which I wanted to ask you, leaving aside tactics, people are talking about 4-finger, 8-finger, China has come here, we have gone there. These stories will continue for quite a while because actually there is an information blockade. Not very many people, even in the media, know what they're talking about. My question to you is, sir, how do we economically, diplomatically, and militarily deal with an ever belligerent China? China will not stop. My belief is that China will not stop unless we take steps to stop China, sir. How do we do that?
Mr. Gaurav, I'll request you just give me about 57 seconds just to explain. We are talking of finger 1, 2, 3, 4, 15. Actually, China has increased into Ladakh, which is the territory which belongs to India, right even before independence and after independence. The question comes, as a strategic thinker and for the information of your viewer, it is the geographic location of any piece of land, territory, or a nation which decides its strategic importance, geopolitical importance, geo-economic importance. And these are the factors which either provoke or they lure the invader into our territory. India probably is among the few countries in the world which has been invaded by a number of times, right from the time of Alexander to Mongols, then to Mughals, then to Britishers, Portuguese, French, you name and they have been here. Why? Why did America go to Afghanistan? Why did they invade? Why did they invade Iraq? Why are they interested in Syria? Why did Russia try their hand on Crimea and Ukraine? And why is China interested in this part? So I will not go into the remaining one. I will confine myself to China. China is interested in the territory or the Indian territory of Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh, what we call the Aksai Chin. And there are reasons for it. Let us home on to Ladakh. Firstly, this territory has a great significance to China, particularly in view of the ambitious designs of China when they want to be the superpower in 2049. Why 2049? Why not 51? Why not before? Because China is going to complete 100 years of becoming a nation. And that is the time they will tell the world that you better listen to us. If you don't, then you know who we are. And India is probably going to be one of the biggest stumbling block for China. The reason being those who can threaten China are almost 12,000 nautical mile away from China. You know whom I am talking. I'll try not to name the nations. When they came to Afghanistan, they had to fly almost about 11,000 nautical miles. Came to Iran, Iraq, they had to fly 9,000 nautical. But to reach this part, it's difficult for them. So they know India is the only one which can stand up to China. And therefore, Ladakh becomes very important for them. It is this territory which will give China an access, unhindered access into POK along the China-Pakistan economic corridor, into Balochistan, and then into Arabian Sea. It is this territory which will give them an access up north towards the junction of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, China, and also of India. If we take our POK, we are linking up with Afghanistan. It is also the territory which is allowing China to use the Aksai Chin road and the infrastructure which has been developed there. And this is also the territory which is going to decide the future of China's hold onto Tibet, onto Xinjiang. And if this hold gets loosened up, China will be heading for a collapse. It will be following the same way as it has happened to one of the superpower, which just got dismantled overnight. No bullet was fired, no shots were fired. You went to sleep, superpower number 2 was there. You got up next day morning, it had just gone. This is what is exactly going to happen to China. Take my words for whatever it is worth. So they are trying to consolidate their power. And this is where their animosity with India, challenge to India, proximity to Pakistan, and the importance of this area comes into being. Same holds good for Arunachal Pradesh also. We'll talk it on later on, the time permits. This is how I would like to explain. The last point on this issue is, we must remember, our past, our history becomes our future. Our history decides our destiny. Unfortunately, we have not studied China properly. There may be few think tanks, there may be few professors, but as a nation, as a governing mechanism, as a bureaucratic mechanism, as a diplomatic corps, we have not understood China properly. If we understood China properly, it is what China wanted us to understand about them. When I was a young child in the school, since then, even till yesterday, I am always told, oh, China is a big power. China is an emerging power. China is a superior in all respect. Huge population, economy, third largest economy, industrial base. My God, are we nothing? Who did this? I think it is the governing mechanism, the government of India, who ruled this nation for more than 50 years, have put this mindset into our mind. And they were ably supported by a political party known as Communist Party of India. They have created this Bhashmasur for us. They have created an imaginary Mahishasur for us. And we all are suffering. Even, sir, you ask somebody on the roadside, oh, this is Cheen के रास्ते पे मत जाना, खा जाएगा, बहुत बड़ा मुल्क है वो, हमको तोड़ देगा. Now, where has this psyche come from? It has been deliberately created, and we'll have to break this psyche first, because we are going to discuss issue first in Indian mind itself, then among the India's neighbors. The message being given to our neighboring countries of China, 14 of them, with whom China has a territorial problem. They have a territorial dispute. That if we can do this to India, you are nobody. You are nobody. So you better listen to us. You listen to us in South China Sea. You listen to us wherever we want you to listen. This is the overall grand strategy of China.
So you made a very interesting point, and you said that there's a superpower. You were alluding to the USSR, and you said we went to sleep at night. It was a superpower. When we woke up, it had ceased to exist as a superpower, and the USSR became Russia overnight, which is actually what happened, sir. Their military defeat, if I may call it so, in Afghanistan, Glasnost, Perestroika, during Gorbachev's time, all this happened, and suddenly that superpower collapsed. Do you think, sir, China's hold on its territories, on its own people, is very tenuous? I've been to China many times, sir, and one thing I realized, I think somewhere along the way, and many people have written about it also, China has exchanged, economic prowess for democracy. So what it does is it has a deal with its citizens. That's my assumption, sir. And it's my personal view that it has a deal, unwritten deal, an unwritten agreement with the citizens. We'll give you a certain standard of living if you keep your mouth shut. And China works on this entire principle of fear. Now, this superpower, sir, and this is a very interesting question, which I'm going to ask you, sir. And this so-called superpower, because you're doing your information warfare PhD in psychological operations, this so-called superpower, economic superpower, wanting to be a military superpower, wanting to challenge America, wanting to subjugate the entire world, it is so afraid that it does not allow Twitter, it does not allow Facebook, it does not allow YouTube, it does not allow Instagram inside China. It has its own ecosystem. Only people who are loyal to the Communist Party can actually use Twitter. People are not allowed freedom of expression. There is no free media. Why is China so afraid, sir? You mentioned China can collapse overnight, but why is it so afraid?
Mr. Gaurav, any individual or any nation whose leadership is vulnerable, they start behaving in a irrational manner. You very rightly used the word Chinese believe in use of force, display of force, and fear. Keep people under fear, constant fear, internally and externally, both ways. I also been to China, negotiated with them for years together. Almost in Kargil, we faced them. China respect power. China respect power and firmness. But inside China, there are enough problems for the Chinese government. It doesn't come through, you are right, because of the censorship or whatever it is you want to call it. People are worried in China. China vulnerability, I'll explain to you later. We always look at the strength of our enemy or adversary. My philosophy, what I have been taught, look for the weakness of your opponent, your adversary, and your enemy. Cash on to those weaknesses. Hit upon those weaknesses, and you will see that will collapse on its own. China has a problem of fear psychosis, very rightly, because their higher leadership is vulnerable. The moment they got into power, they appoint themselves for the whole life. And they say, oh, we are the only one who can save you. We will feed you right. We will look after you. You just keep quiet and keep doing what we want you to do. But the problem in China is coming up is, it is the American and European educated leadership, which is gradually getting restive, a large chunk, because it's a dream of every child in China to go and study in USA or in Europe, including the present leadership of China. They also studied there. So they know how to control the people. They know exactly what they have done. And today, the world listened to him. Since we are talking in India, Indian context, there is a saying in Ramayana, समर्थ को नहीं दोष गुसाई, सामर्थ्यवान व्यक्ति का, सामर्थ्यवान संप्रदाय का, सामर्थ्यवान राष्ट्र का कोई दोष नहीं होता है. And that is what they are using to control their own population, and they are also using the same to control their neighborhood, and they are sending the same message that look, we are too powerful for you. Don't you ever dare to challenge us. It is the vulnerable leadership. There are two concepts of leadership. One is the ethical leadership we all follow in India and elsewhere in some countries in the world. The second is the vulnerable leadership. The moment the leadership is vulnerable, they start behaving in an irrational manner. That irrational behavior brings their downfall closer to their end. And that is why I am predicting the downfall of the regime is bound to take place. And Chinese may do well. And the young generation of China is now getting restive slowly. This is the biggest fault line of China.
Sir, you are the architect and the fountainhead of the Shekatkar committee report, sir. And the committee bears your name. It bears your name, sir. Now, my question to you, General Shekatkar, is that in the limited context of China, because I would love to do another episode with you, sir, with your permission, on the Shekatkar committee report specifically, sir. And we'll save the details for a later episode, which I'm very, very keen to do with your permission. But what I'd like to ask you here, sir, with the limited context of our engagement with China that is happening, which is happening in Ladakh currently, and of course there are tensions in Arunachal, and of course the line of actual control is heating up. India has its aggressive posture in place, China has its aggressive posture in place, but what does the Shekatkar committee actually think about this in the limited context of China here, sir? We talked about, or we often talk about the strike course or 17 Corps Panagarh. We talk about that course. So we talk about, a lot of people have been saying that maybe, the Ladakh scouts, maybe people who are from that location, so the Kumaon scouts, the Garhwalis, the Arunachal scouts, the Sikkim scouts, these are great and fantastic battalions and regiments, sir. And maybe they could be raised, new battalions could be raised. That is one thought. I would like your thoughts about this, General Shekatkar.
This so-called Shekatkar committee, actually it happened by accident. The real title of this committee is Committee of Expert to reorganize, reorientate defense structure of India and rebalancing the defense budget. The name of Shekatkar has not come into that. It so happened that one day when the previous Raksha Mantri, God bless his soul, he was addressing a seminar, somebody asked him a question. When are you going to appoint the Chief of Defense Staff? And he said, look, we have appointed a committee under General Shekatkar. When the report comes, and again he repeated the word, when the report of the Shekatkar committee comes, we will take a decision. From that day, this committee has become Shekatkar committee. Otherwise, it is a committee of experts. Shekatkar happened to be only person. By chance, it was there. There are more capable people who are part of this committee who have served together. Coming back to this point of yours, we have made certain sensitive recommendation. In my own handwriting, 186 pages, handwritten, top secret, which I handed over to them. So I will not touch upon those aspects. There are certain aspects of China also in that, Pakistan also in that, and other issues. But I will go on to what is in public domain today, what is in public domain, and give my own interpretation to you. We have mentioned, we have studied the futuristic environment of India and neighbor and the world, and how it is going to impact India, and particularly in our neighborhood. And we have dealt at length about China. We have said about Doklam, we have spoken about Ladakh, South China Sea, Indian Ocean, all the aspects of China we have discovered in that. And therefore, we recommended there that if we do not wake up in time, China is going to show us the thumb. Today, sir, in the international diplomacy, and this is part of the report, what I am quoting you, in international diplomacy, military diplomacy is taking precedence over a conventional diplomacy. First, the nations start using force. And once they have been able to terrorize the opponent, then say, now let's come and discuss. See, look what happened in China. First they came to Galwan, they came into the finger 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, wherever they come. They used the force on 15th, and then 16th onward we started listening, oh, there is a diplomatic level talk. Even before that, when the corps commanders left, I am sure diplomatic discussion must have been there in Delhi air-conditioned office between the two, and they must have decided our commanders will meet. But that got precedence. This is an indication for us. And therefore, China is getting used to first using the force. First ingress into your territory. First occupy your territory. First do the damage what they can do. And they say we will now discuss. This is their part of that committee. It is there. The second one we have given there is, instead of use of weapons of mass destruction, that is nuclear power, China will get tempted to use the means and mechanism of disruption of masses. Disruption and destruction of masses. This accidental leak of this Wuhan virus, this is part of biological warfare. It is there in the report, it is there, how it will happen. We have not written there corona, but we have given this indication. Based on this is the strike core you asked about the things. We need the core, because as I mentioned to you, China respect power, China respect firmness, and you have to keep the option open. In case China makes unwarranted ingress into some part of a territory, say Ladakh or anywhere else, we should be able to respond, and we should be able to hit him hard so badly that he will have no option but to recoil. And for that you need force, a dedicated force, a properly equipped force, who should be doing the training, a well-equipped force. And that is why this corps came into being. Where we use it, why we use it is not the point. The second is, in mountains, the employability and deployability of forces is limited. You can have 3 cores, but at a given particular point of time, you may not be able to use more than about 100, 125 company in the or we call them a company, or at the most 800 people, we call them battalion. You can, this is what Chinese have done. Look at in Aksai Chin area, behind this area where the dispute is taking place, they amassed the entire force, a division worth, a mechanized brigade, armored columns, guns, everything is there. But what can they bring there? That is a major problem. And the same will apply to us also. But unless you have them there in close proximity, you will not be able to deploy them. Therefore, the requirement of strike core is there. And that is very important, because your enemy, I don't think we should now start calling China as a friend. Gone those days. They're gone for over. We'll be doing a bigger disservice to tell our coming generation, tell our young children, Hindi Chini bhai bhai, no more bhai bhai. They proved it beyond any doubt. For last 25 years they've been proving. After 1993, when somebody said peace and tranquility agreement, some wise man, a great diplomat, an expert on China, who has been advising the government that time, they say because of this agreement, not one bullet has been fired. There's a statement on record on the TV channel just about a month back. But he forgot to mention the truth that without firing one shot, Chinese have acquired the territory worth kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. The staying power has gone up. We have taken these factors, and that's how we have recommended the requirement of strike core. I will not go into detail where this will be used. It will depend on how the Chinese behave that time and how we want to punish China. You must be able to punish China. If you don't punish, China will punish you. They are punishing us. Our people are getting killed. They are dying. We are creating more widows. Their children are getting orphaned. Look at a 5-year-old child, son. He is giving prayer to his father. What a shame. Which country we are talking about? Is it the way we have to live? I think the time has gone. We are not to be showing ourselves we are a powerful nation, but we are not an aggressive nation. We would like to live in peace and harmony with everybody. But if you take, I think some anchor, a very big anchor took the name, if you take Panga with us, then we know how to retaliate. That is what we should be doing, sir. And our entire force structure recommended by this committee, where to cut it from, where to increase, is thrust upon this. How will our adversaries and proclaimed enemy number 1, Pakistan, behave in another 20-25 years? Will they join together? The so-called talk of 2-front war, 2.5 front war. I think we should be ready for 3.5 front war. 3.5 front war. Because the war is not remaining to confine only to the sea, land and air. It will be below the sea surface now. It will be below the sky. It will be going to space, cyber, satellites. All these things are going to come. All these things are, and we have taken these into account. And therefore, we have to be prepared to hit China so hard, that they require at least about 15 to 20 years to recoup, to regain. It does not mean we start using a nuclear weapon. No, not at all. I'll just explain to you after some time how to do it, how to deal with China. Understand, we have identified China's weaknesses, and we are recommended there as part of the top secret document, so I'll not mention about that. But China has a number of weaknesses. We should first of all hit upon China's economic power. Whatever weapons, technology, guns, aircraft they are holding, where do they get these from? They get it from the economic strength of China. What is the sustenance of economic strength of China? It is the industrial sustenance. And that industrial things start on their exports and sale of items all over the world. If we can hit upon these, then China will not be able to buy the same weapon. He cannot think of aircraft carriers anymore. He cannot think of other things on that end.
Sure.
That is what we should be doing. That is what we should be doing. We are not doing, unfortunately. Oh, we say, oh, we have a great friend. Somebody said, what a shame. Allow me to say, sir, I will not take more than 46 seconds. Please. One of the foreign minister, when the Chinese had ingressed almost 17 kilometers into Ladakh in 2013, one of the foreign ministers said, oh, there is a small little mole on our hand. We'll apply the cream on ointment, it will get discovered. That mole has got increased into a tumor. That tumor has got converted into cancer. And now that cancerous growth is going on. It has gone to Galwan. They have asked for Galwan Valley. They will now ask for Karakoram Highway. They will ask for Siachen Glacier's area behind. This cancer is growing. It is just growing. If you can't stop, this is what will happen. The second one, the Prime Minister of that time, he said, oh, this is a localized affair. What sort of wisdom we are including? Even Galwan is a localized affairs. We are not sitting in there. Delhi is calm, Bombay is calm, we are sitting at our home. It's a localized affair. But the localized affair has a wider ramifications. War will not remain localized to anything. But the Prime Minister of that time said it's a localized affair, we'll sort it out. It is this mentality of Indian political leadership, with all my respect to them, and with your permission, sir, which has allowed China to grow beyond its height. To grow beyond its heights. They got to be taught a lesson. They got to be told what is your height and where do you stand for.
So you've set me thinking, and I made a few notes, and I have a very important question for you, sir, because what you said is something that is very close to the hearts of a lot of people who actually believe that India should play to its strengths. And I believe it is my personal view also, sir, that the armed forces in a larger context should be part of India's foreign policy. You spoke about this. You said that first they use military strength and then they said, okay, we'll have diplomatic negotiations. America invented this whole thing called the gunboat diplomacy, sir. Do you think that if India has to sit at the high table of even the United Nations Security Council as a permanent member in the coming years, or India wants to be taken seriously as a military power globally, do you think it needs to really start batting on the front foot rather than playing defensive? And also the fact that, sir, there are no prizes for good boys here. You said that we should not be aggressive. I totally agree with you, sir. But people need to understand that being peaceful is not being harmless. So we may be peaceful, but we are not harmless. Do you think it is time for the armed forces actually to step forward, and the government of India should include the armed forces in this entire foreign policy structure that India has?
Yes, sir, you are absolutely right. Government, this decision will not be taken by armed forces. It is the government of India must realize it's a high time that you keep the armed forces, the decision makers, maybe the chief of defense staff, maybe the army chief, air force chiefs, naval chiefs, the army commanders level people, and their equivalent in the air force, navy, in a loop. Don't say we have discussed this with Chinese, now you better do it. There is a study group. They call it China Study Group. They have been the biggest stumbling block. And they are all staffed by the local people who are the top at that time. I don't want to name the ministries, there are 5 of them. They have invited a lot of trouble. And they tell the armed forces, don't go there for patrolling, don't do this, Chinese will get annoyed, we'll deal diplomatically. We all have been dealing diplomatically. Even Pandit Nehru and Krishna Menon were dealing with China diplomatically. What happened? They have come and sit there. They are sitting there now. They captured our territory, thousands and thousands of square kilometers. So I agree with you that armed forces should be in the loop. They may not be in front. You may not put it, because in India we are very shy. The political leadership, the governing mechanism, and the diplomats, they will never like to take armed forces with them. I am not talking the present political leadership. There is some change going on now, and that's why you find the Department of Military Affairs has come. But look at the people who are unhappy with this particular name itself. They think their empire is going to shrink. In saving their own personal empire, they are going to ruin India's long-term future. So therefore, I agree, armed forces must be involved in the foreign policy. Their advice could be taken. You can ignore, because you are the powerful people. You are the Bharat Bhagya Vidata, sitting in an air-conditioned office, deciding what should happen in Galwan or Ladakh. So you can ignore them, but do take their advice into consideration. We have also gone to the extent, we have recommended to the government for their kind consideration, let us put our defense attaches, military attaches in almost all the embassies across the world, because they will understand, they will project the power. They are not going to overstep on the diplomatic leadership. No, not at all. They will be supportive in role. But there is a resistance. No, 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 why do you need? We don't require anything. Look at the Americans, look at the Russians, look at the Chinese. They're all sending it there. And we are the only one who are not doing it. So I think it's a high time we have to think on these lines. We should be able to. The point you mentioned, sir, again, one other point we mentioned about the things. We are not an aggressive nation. India has never been aggressive nation. But it should not mean that we are a weak nation. If you force us beyond a particular point, then we know how to do it and what to do it. And for that we should be prepared. Connected to the foreign policy is, there is an old saying in Manusmriti, it is saying in Chanakya Niti, it was said by Shivaji Maharaj, if you wish to prevent a war, be prepared for it. Never be eager for a war, but be prepared for it. If you are not prepared for a war, then you will get sucked into the war at the place, a time, and the circumstances which will not be of your choosing. This is what happened. And unfortunately, for some reason, since they have studied in abroad, in convent schools, English people, they don't understand the simple thing. And they say, no, we are going to deal diplomatically. We have dealt enough diplomatically. And that is how we invited all these aggressors in our territory. So I think there is a need for armed forces to be incorporated. I am supporting this. It is required for us.
Sure.
It does not mean that armed forces will start sitting a higher table. No. They will be with you all the time.
No, absolutely, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, before I ask the last question of this episode to General Shekatkar, there is a recommendation that I have for all of you. There is a book written by Brigadier John Dalvi. It's on the 1962 war. It's called The Himalayan Blunder. The Himalayan Blunder. All those of you who want to understand what happened in the 1962 war, please read Brigadier Dalvi's book. It is an eye-opening book. When I read it, I was shocked. And my senior in the unit had told me, my first CO, Colonel K. Pathak, who's now retired and settled in Lucknow, Colonel Pathak told me, he said, son, read this book. And when I read that book, I went up to him and I said, after a week or so, I went up to him and I said, sir, I'm so shocked, I don't know what to say. He says, which is why you must read this book. It will shock you. And you must be shocked. You must understand what is happening. So my last question to you is, sir, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, Xinjiang province with the Uyghur Muslim population. Now, China has enough and more fault lines. And in the initial part of your answer, sir, in the first 5 minutes or so, you had said that we don't study enough about China. You said that China, we must know what the weak spots of China are. So even in the army, sir, when we are taught to give a briefing, that is the first thing they say, Khabar Dushman ki. You must understand what is the enemy up to, and it means everything, sir. Their strengths and weaknesses. We don't study China. My specific question to you, General Shekatkar, is that with respect to Taiwan and Hong Kong and Tibet and the Uyghur Muslim issue which is happening, sir, should India now play on the front foot, take cognizance of all these things and have a massive information warfare and a diplomatic effort to push these things through? Because there are people, just imagine, sir, and I'm very surprised, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, a group of 57 Muslim countries, have nothing to say about 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims who are in prison in China. Just imagine, sir, countries which call themselves Muslim, their constitution, their name is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of such and such. They claim to stand for Muslims. The OIC claims to stand for Muslims. But when it comes to Muslims in China, everybody is quiet. Nobody speaks a word. Now, is it time for us to exploit China's fault lines, sir? Tibet, Taiwan, anything, sir?
Yes, sir, you are right. You are absolutely right. Just one point, you mentioned about the book written by Brigadier John Dalvi. I also studied when I took over the Corps. I had to study all these untold stories and so on, because as a Corps commander, I had to know what had gone wrong. Though I was a young officer at that time. I would recommend your viewers who are listening to you or watching you, read page number 150 and 151. Khrushchev has told that time, Marshal Chen Yi and Krishna Menon in Geneva, they had gone for a conference on this very issue. And the prediction that time, what has been made by John Dalvi, have come true. That's why I said, if you ignore your history, history will punish you. And that is what is happening. None of them studied. We study China, what China would like us to study. all our think tanks sitting in Delhi, taking tons of money from the government and from different sources, which they are not supposed to be. They are praising China all the time. When you say of the fault lines, I would request you and your viewers, India has not been an aggressive nation. India never interferes into the internal affairs of the adversary or anybody, unless you are invited. 71 was different thing, it was invited, there were other issues. We only go outside India under the banner of United Nations Peacekeeping Force. So we don't. So our mentality is also not there. So we will not. But you rightly said, unless you understand the fault lines of your adversary, how will you exploit if you get an opportunity? How will you get it? Opportunities will not come twice at knocking your door. Why can't we use India's soft power? The committee report has given India's hard power should be able to protect India's soft power. A combination of hard power and soft power should be converted into India's smart power. That smart power will give you the results. I don't want to explain the whole thing, but let me assure our Chinese adversaries also, we are not coming to tell somebody that they should revolt against you. But if they revolt against you, it is your problem and their problem. We are not going to send you the weapons like you have been sending to Northeast. You have equipped all the states of guerrilla. I was there in 1964 onwards, fought China, trained Mayawangam's gang in Mizoram, in Manipur. The MPLA went to China. They equipped our Naxalites. And when we told Chinese, on negotiating table I don't speak, it is the diplomat who speak, but over a coffee table we spoke. I said, Your Excellency, you are equipping the weapons to our adversaries. They said, no, these weapons are available in Thailand. You go to any shop, you will buy it. I said, but they are given by China free of cost. So he kept quiet. But officially he made a statement. Mr. K. Srinivasan was our foreign secretary, and Honorable Mr. Menon, who became the foreign secretary, he was there, Joint Secretary East. And he gave us a warning. He said, and I quote, "It is good to be good with your neighbor." Who said that? The Vice Foreign Minister of China, who became the foreign minister. Just till recently he was the foreign minister. It is good to be good with your neighbor than to depend on your uncle who is 1,000 kilometers away. This is how Chinese give us the threat. This is how Chinese tell us to behave. This is how Chinese give us the warning that you better be ready. And this is how I think we should also be thinking on those lines. What can be China's next move against us here or anywhere else? And as you very rightly said, it can be Tibet, it can be Uyghur, it can be Mongolians, it can be Manchurians, it can be Taiwans. Taiwans, of course, are doing the thing. It can be young generation in Hong Kong. The young generation in China is restive today. We are not going to tell them to pick up the weapon against the government of China. No, not at all. We are not going to teach them. But if they request for a help to somebody, then we have to think twice. And this threat must be there in the Chinese mind, the mind of the Chinese government, that if somebody approaches India, India may have to come to their help or rescue whatever. We may not come. Our government policy is not there. It is not our national policy. We don't interfere in anybody's things. But in 21st century, we'll have to think twice. We have to realign our thought process. We have to realign our diplomatic channels. We have to realign our diplomacy. We have to realign the support of military diplomacy for the success of conventional diplomacy. This realignment, rebalancing, reorganization, rethinking must take place, and that is one of the thrusts of this committee.
Thank you very much, sir. It was enlightening, and I have been so educated speaking to you for the past 40 minutes or so. It's been a great honor and a privilege, sir, to have you on our show. Viewers, with Lieutenant General D.B. Shekatkar, he's a legend in his own right. He's quoted in army circles, he's quoted in the defense ministry. Everybody listens to him, and so should you. And the crux of what he said was that our policies in the past have been wrong. What we need is a more aggressive India. Not an aggressor India, but an India that knows what is right and what is wrong, and the world recognizes India for both its soft power and its hard power. I end this episode with a quote from the Ramayana. बिना नमाना जलद जड़ गए 3 दिन बीत बोले राम सकोप तब भय बिन होय न प्रीत. There is no friendship without fear, my friends. There is no friendship without fear. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you in a few days with another episode of Blitzkrieg. Till then, from my team and I, Jai Hind.